Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Classically Chloe Show. I'm your host, Chloe Castillo. This episode is being recorded the night after November 5th. What a landslide victory for Donald Trump last night. I'm just so incredibly thankful, so excited for these next 4 years, what they have to bring, and bringing back our nation, bringing back America to make it great again and to make music great again. And speaking of making music great again, I have a fantastic guest for us here today. Christopher Macchio has been an absolute astounding presence as far as music goes for the MAGA movement. He's been performing opera. He's in, I would say at this point, the MAGA tenor in a way. He's been performing all the Trump rallies and events, and he's just an outstanding musician. So, Chris, thank you so much for being here. It's great to have you.
Oh, it's absolutely great to be here. Thank you very much.
So, Chris, I'm just going to ask you first off, we just can't skip this question. How are you feeling after last night?
Oh, well, I'm just more than elated, overjoyed, relieved, all the positive emotions. You know, I was down here in Palm Beach for a private event. I was staying at Trump Jupiter, and I flew back up to New York, where I'm registered to vote, just to vote. That was it. I flew back up, I voted for President Trump, and then I flew right back down for Election Day and all of this. And it's just been a whirlwind. It really has.
Well, I mean, I just can't express, again, the amount of gratitude to everybody who's put in so much to winning this election. And of course, to God, too, for his grace on our country. I'm beyond elated, like you said. So I'm going to ask you, too, what has it been like to kind of become the official tenor for President Trump?
Well, first and foremost, it's a privilege, and I'm honored to play whatever humble role I can play in this equation. But it's a privilege to be able to serve and to highlight classical music, in the political space. I think it serves as a compelling contrast with some of the music that we've seen from the other side. Um, and it was an opportunity to bring some of this music to communities that maybe traditionally don't focus on opera or classical, and so it was very heartening and encouraging to receive messages of support from all 50 states, really. The proverbial red states, people saying, you know, I don't listen to opera and I've never heard Nessun Dorma before, but you have such a great voice. And of course, many of these people point out what is obvious to people like you and I, which is that these kinds of gifts and this kind of art ultimately derives from God. And it's such an important thing for artists like us to explicitly acknowledge that in the public space, where the tendency in recent years has been to try to banish religion from public fora, and we have to push against that as best we can.
Absolutely. And I want to pull up an article right here, a Breitbart article talking about Kamala Harris's campaign. We can pull it up on the screen. That'd be great. Kamala campaign mocked over profanity-laden, bleeped out every other word, guerrilla rap performance at Milwaukee rally. And I just, like you just said, Chris, it's really sad the music that the left has to offer, and we've been seeing it. And I mean, Megan Thee Stallion performed at some of her rallies, and it's very sad that the culture the left has to offer is so against all the values that make America great. And so that's been really incredible hearing you perform and bringing those kind of values back to America and back to the conservative movement, and really bringing it forward in our culture. So I got to ask you too, what do you think is so important about beauty in music? I know it sounds simple, but I think that in recent years we've gotten farther and farther away from actual beauty in music. What do you think the importance is of bringing that back to our culture?
Well, being Italian, first of all, and having recently returned from Italy, when I performed at Butler, I was actually on my Italian tour, a 16-day tour of Italy. And I got the call while I was in Venice from the campaign, and they said President Trump would like you to perform in Butler. And so I had to rearrange the tour and fly from Italy to Pittsburgh and get myself to Butler and then back to Italy to finish up that tour. But one thing that people who travel to Italy will be become aware of, is that Italy essentially worships beauty. But there's a reason for that. It is not a secular exercise, beauty for its own sake, and that's it. There's a purpose to beauty, and that is the ennoblement of the human condition, is an expression of God's grace. That is really when you're using and looking at beauty in the right way, where it actually takes on meaning. And so when you produce any kind of beautiful art, but in our case, beautiful music, that is what it is meant to do. That's the purpose that it's meant to serve, is to articulate the human condition and all those universal attributes therein in a way that elevates and ennobles the discussion, as opposed to debases the discussion, which of course is what we've seen again on the other side.
Absolutely, and that's just beautiful, Chris. And I love that about the Italian culture too. I've always loved everything Italian related. Actually, I think it's a really astounding culture, and I love especially when it kind of mixes with American culture. And seeing that in you and your performances is really incredible to me. Um, so I'm going to ask you too, as far as the youth goes in America, we're not very familiar with this kind of art. I grew up classically trained. I love this kind of music. Classical and jazz are my favorites. But most of the youth of America, they're just not really cultured as far as classical goes, and jazz too. I think that classical and jazz both offer something really beautiful to American culture, and I love that you're bringing that back with the classical side in the MAGA movement. I think it's incredibly important. How have you seen, I guess, people view you a little bit differently since you performed at Butler? What has changed in your career? Have you seen more young people kind of acknowledging your performances, or what does that look like?
Well, at the end of the day, when these opportunities are executed properly and they're publicized properly, it kind of just it brings all of these different elements together in a way they can overlap on the old Venn diagram, so to speak. And so you have people who are into music, but like you said, maybe they're not exposed very often to classical or jazz. You have people that have a certain spirituality. There are young people across the nation that are active in their churches and in their youth groups and things like that. And so these opportunities allow the bringing together of these disparate components. So a lot of the people that approach me in the weeks since Butler have specifically touched on the religious and spiritual component, which for me is just so satisfying, because again, it really reinforces and comes back to acknowledging where all beauty, all art, and all the gifts that each of us are endowed with, it all derives from God. And so it essentially is a beautiful reminder that all roads do lead to our Lord and Savior. It all leads to our Lord and Savior, and that's a really wonderful reality to be mindful of, and that's what I've been seeing from people of all ages, but particularly satisfying to see it coming from the youth.
Absolutely. And we had in Bach's music, he used to write Soli Deo Gloria, all the glory be to God at the end of all his compositions. And I think that's something really magical about classical, is that so much of it was written in its day to glorify God and to glorify the Lord. I think that's one reason why it is so beautiful, is because it was all to the glory of God. And that's something we need to bring back today in our culture now in America and just throughout the world, whether it be classical or another genre. I think we need to start creating music again for the glory of God. It doesn't necessarily have to be Christian music with Christian lyrics, but just music that was written to the glory of God. I think that's just incredibly important. So I want to play a couple clips here of some of your performances. I'm going to pull up just a few of those. I want to let my audience hear you. You're absolutely amazing. Let's go ahead and roll those clips.
And I said, I want to do a really big climactic New York, not just any old rendition.
Christopher Macchio at Bedminster. He's performing tonight. Are you excited?
I love him. You did a great job in Bedminster.
You like Sinatra?
Yes.
You're playing the garden.
Exactly.
You're like Sinatra.
Exactly.
That's right.
Yeah, sitting right next to Corey Comfort's family. Everyone was crying.
Oh, wow.
People were in tears. You really crushed it, brother.
Because this is like the New York comeback, the energy in
Which
there,
is
right?
why I suggested it in the first place. They came around to my way of thinking on this, and it's going to be a huge moment.
We are going to win New York.
But there's nobody with the voice like this man.
We're here at Trump Bedminster, summertime home of the 45th President of the United States.
And so it's an honor that you're here, and I appreciate it very much.
And it's a real pleasure for him to have asked me to come and entertain himself, his family, and his loyal club members. So I'm so privileged to be a part of his service.
So Chris, I mean, just absolutely fantastical. Every time I hear you perform, it just blows me away. I absolutely love it. I was so happy. My first Trump rally ever actually was Madison Square Garden. I'd never been, and I've been really involved actually for quite a year and a half. And I'd never been, and last minute someone said, "Look, you need to go," and I went. And when you came out singing New York, New York, it was just so epic. It was made the whole experience. I actually told several people before the rally. I said, I've heard President Trump speak a few times, and I love the man. He's fantastic. But I'm more excited to hear Chris sing than anything else tonight. It's just, I couldn't wait to hear you. So thank you. Thank you for bringing that kind of energy. I love it.
It's just a privilege.
Yeah, well, I can only imagine being able to perform that kind of music for the greatest president we've ever had, and for one of the most, I guess, important movements in American history to take back our country from the degenerate leftists that have actually been destroying our nation, destroying our culture, and to have the music side of that, bringing it into this movement has got to be just absolutely incredible. A question for you here. You sing in over a dozen languages, is that correct?
Yes.
So I'm just going to ask you to expand on that. What's that like? What's your favorite language to sing? I'm assuming it's Italian. I could be wrong, though.
Well, I have to tell you, it is Italian. Of course, I'm a native English speaker, but it's my belief and the belief of a lot of people, I guess, who study music, that at the end of the day, the Italian language is the one that lends itself most to maximizing the beauty and capacity of the human form to phonate, create sound. And so I love it. But having said that, of course, music is a universal medium. And so long as you imbue the right intention and passion into what you're singing, that can come across in all kinds of languages. And it really, I perform in languages that I don't speak. And, the reaction of people who are native speakers of those tongues, they really appreciate it. They really do. They appreciate the effort and the acknowledgement of, the merits of their culture. And I love making those connections. I really do.
So what would you say your favorite genre is to sing? Again, I'm assuming it's classical, but what do you think is the most important to keep alive and to continue?
Well, at the end of the day, classical and the fine arts are very, very important because they do serve as the foundation of the other genres of expression that derive from them. So if one wants to be even a hip hop dancer, even some kind of pop culture dance, at the end of the day, those movements and those kinesthetics are best informed when one has a solid foundation in the ballet. And so I'm a strong believer in in utilizing the rich cultural endowment represented by Western civilization as the foundation for all of the other art forms. So it's important on that basis. It does not mean that there is not a wealth of merit to all kinds of other genres of expression, and there's a time and a place for almost anything. But that centrality of the classical arts, I think, is something that has recently been lost, especially like you said with the younger people, because there are times where the refinement of those art forms kind of removes them and makes them a little less accessible to people who have not been properly exposed to it, and for whom a proper explanation of those things has not been provided. And so there are ways that we can address it. And I have to call out just for a second the right, because for decades now, maybe even for almost a century, the people of a right-wing philosophy have forfeited the cultural space to the left. And the left, to their credit, I guess you could say, has recognized the potency of culture in moving the hearts and minds of the populace over long periods of time. And I think that, right-wing focus on, 90-day quarterly results and the bottom line in their financials has been a little bit short-sighted, and there's a lot of opportunity for the right and people with resources on the right to re-engage and make those long-term investments in the arts and culture that ultimately help shape and guide the evolution of the cultural discourse.
Chris, I cannot tell you how perfectly you just, I guess, encapsulate everything I've been trying to, say to the conservative movement for the past year and a half myself. As a young person, I was raised classical, like I said, and then woke up when I was about 15 to the indoctrination going on through pop culture. I'd never really been exposed to it myself. So when I heard it for the first time on social media, I was like, wow, my generation's being just straight up indoctrinated by the leftist ideologies that are so, pervasive in our culture. And so hearing you say that was, you said, you worded it so perfectly. I don't know how you're able to think so clearly after last night. I know I'm exhausted.
I got very little sleep, but I did have the benefit of a cup of coffee earlier. So, but this is something that is important to me over my lifetime. And I was just looking for the proper opportunity, forum, and an avenue to kind of play a role in pushing back against this and restoring wholesomeness and purity and elevation
Absolutely.
into this cultural landscape that we hold so dear. And that was one thing that drew me to your accounts on social media and your efforts, because I've been wanting to engage in this kind of activity, and then I saw what you've been doing, and I was just so pleasantly surprised to see someone so active in this exact same space. And I said, we've got to work together, Chloe and I, and we've got to be a part of a greater movement, and if we can get people like, dare I say it, Elon Musk, I don't know what his cultural predilections are exactly, but I think he would be receptive potentially to a case being made that this kind of ROI on an investment in culture, it's really going to pay dividends for decades and even perhaps for centuries.
Well, I got to tell you, if we want to make America great again and want to really build up our country to the strong nation that it once was, culture is one of the most important ways we can actually accomplish that. If we can make America strong all day long, as far as our, like you said, our economy goes and our foreign affairs, and that has to happen. But I would say, just as important that at home we, capture the American people's hearts and minds again with the values that do make America great and make America prosperous. And it starts at home as well. The youth, if they don't have these kind of values through culture beyond just what the parents tell them, if the culture isn't in some way reinforcing this, we're going to lose, again, the next generation and be right back where we started after these next 4 years. So I think that this opportunity right now, in these next 4 years, as musicians, as people who are passionate about this, like you and I, and people, like you said, like Elon Musk, who might be willing to listen, now is the time more than ever to actually start pushing this messaging out there, get the conservative movement to wake up. You don't know how refreshing it was to hear you say so perfectly and eloquently, call out the right, I guess, for just having their head in the sand for so long when it comes to culture and art. It is so,
Yes.
so important. And so I am, I feel truly blessed to be talking to you about this. Someone who's so, such a fantastic musician yourself and passionate about our nation. So Chris,
people need to understand the left does not have the market cornered on creativity. The creative process does not require suspension of any kind of morality or standards, and that's really key for people to grasp.
Absolutely. So I'm going to ask you, what do you think we can do? What are some first steps to take back our culture and just for America and for the youth?
Well, it really is going to take, like we just said, substantial and intentional investment. And that, of course, has to start with the youth. It has to start in schools, and, you know, but it has to carry forward through different media that's being consumed, and it's got, again, it has to be intentional. It can't be haphazard. Uh, the right really needs to take control of a lot of the cultural institutions, whether it's Lincoln Center in New York or the National Public Broadcasting System. I mean, NPR and PBS and things like that are ostensibly nonpartisan, but in fact are leftist mouthpieces. Those need to be fully taken over, not disbanded, not liquidated, but in fact taken over and put to use as mediums through which we can inculcate the youth with a moral compass, a higher sensibility of purpose. You see the effects of secularism and leftism on the youth. You see suicide rates and drug use at all-time highs. And all of this is because the emptiness that is left in the wake of the removal of religiosity and spirituality can only lead to those kinds of outcomes. And really, people are always searching for something. They're always searching for some meaning, some purpose to life. And if they don't find it in the higher, more noble ethoses, then they're going to be left with something, far, far below and substandard. And we really need to fight against that. And so it's got to be through the schools, and it's got to be through all the media outlets that the youth of our country and indeed the world are exposed to. And AI is going to play a role, and social media is going to play a role, and you can use the iPads and the iPhones as vehicles to deliver a uplifting message, so children understand that they are special because they can be called to serve a higher purpose, not being special because everybody is a snowflake and everybody has a right not to be offended and everybody needs a trophy and all this other silly nonsense. And so I think there's a lot of opportunity for that. And it's going to be so beautiful to witness a new renaissance, a new rebirth, a cultural awakening. And people like you and I and President Trump and the people that he's bringing on board can play an important role in that entire process.
Absolutely. And you just said a minute ago, Chris, people need to find a higher purpose in God. And I think right now, a lot of youth in our culture are trying to find a higher purpose in self. They're trying to find that purpose within themselves, and that's never gonna be satisfying. It's never going to be enough because only God is enough. And I think we really see that in our culture, though, too. And then, of course, the culture then is going to affect the political landscape as well. You have Kamala Harris saying that Christ does not belong in her rallies, and we wonder, how do we get to this point? It's America. How do we have rallies where the president saying Christ is not welcome in her presence? I mean, that's pretty incredible. When you look at the musicians, though, that she has performing, you look at the people who, I guess, are supporting these musicians and then supporting Kamala Harris, it all makes sense. It all kind of goes into play. The youth are being raised on these secular values, and they're being told, you are everything, kind of almost in a way you're your own God because you just serve yourself alone. You don't serve anything higher than yourself. And when you get to that point, America, I think we're seeing the results of that play out every single day. And I'm so grateful that President Trump won last night. I mean, I'm kind of still in shock, honestly. I mean, I knew he would win, but at the same time, I didn't really think it was going to be a landslide like they called it. And so I'm just so grateful, and I feel really grateful that the American people have woken up in this way, and I think that now is the perfect time, now that we have President Trump back in office, to then do the same thing with our culture, wake them up to what needs to happen to shift our culture to continue to make America great and to keep it great for so many more years to come.
And I'm so glad that President Trump has always been so involved in and receptive to, the cultural space. And Melania, the First Lady's letter to the public indicated those elements of his personality and humanity that are often left underexposed and underspoken about through the media. And I think we've seen how much he loves music, and I think he'll be receptive to what you and I are talking about, and he'll bring some resources on board so that we can effectuate the changes that we know in our hearts are necessary.
Absolutely. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on today. I'm so happy to have you on. That was a fantastic discussion. I'm so excited about what we have ahead of us here in these next 4 years with our country getting back on the right track, and of course, getting our culture back on the right track. So, Chris, please tell my audience, where can they find you? Where can they support you? And maybe where can they hear you perform?
Well, the best way is, I'm relaunching my website, but it'll be, ChristopherMacchio.com, my full name. And then X and Instagram, both handles are Chris Macchio, ChrisMacchio. That's the best way to keep track of what I'll be doing, and I'm just looking forward to Inauguration Day.
I can't wait. Chris, thank you so much. Wonderful talking to you.
Likewise. Thank you so much for what you do.
You too. All right, everyone, thank you so much for watching that episode. Please make sure you follow this podcast, The Classically Chloe Show, on Rumble, Spotify, and YouTube to stay up to date on all of our next episodes. I am just so excited that we have Chris on today, and I'm so excited to hear him perform next. Who knows, maybe Inauguration Day. That would be fantastic. Anyway, please do stay tuned. Please subscribe to the podcast. God bless. See you next week.
Throughout history, the spirit of patriotism has prevailed. The battles may have changed, but the values remain the same. Today, in 2024, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment where the call for unity, freedom, and a better future echoes louder than ever. For more than 10 years, Patriot Mobile has been committed to supporting the values that make our nation great. With affordable plans and reliable nationwide coverage, Patriot Mobile is not just a wireless service. It's a call to action for those who believe in the American dream. Because this year is not just any year, it's the most important year since our nation's founding. Choose a wireless carrier that shares your values. Choose Patriot Mobile.